What's up, witches? Welcome to another episode of the BetterWitch podcast, presented by the Modern Witch Network. I'm your host, Allie, aka BronxWitch. I'm a tarot reader, Reiki healer, and owner of BronxWitch HeadQuarters, a conjure shop and witchy workshare space in the Bronx, New York. And I'm going to be coming to you every week with a new topic and perhaps a guest co-host to share our real life experiences and some of the things we've learned as practicing witches. Because when we know better, we witch better. Today's guest co-host is Jasmine Aten. Jasmine, aka Mystic at the Crossroads, is a third-generation witch, candle magic practitioner, certified Reiki healer, ordained minister, and spiritual life coach. Jasmine has been working with clients professionally for 7 years, but was raised in a magical lifestyle as her mother was a hoodoo practitioner and conjure woman. She taught Jasmine everything she knows. You can find Jasmine on Instagram and TikTok as One Ritual Away, on YouTube as Mystic at the Crossroads, and learn more about Jasmine on her website, oneritualaway.com. Special about a candle and a flame. And from your perspective, I guess I'm wondering, what is the significance of candles? Because they play a big part in your practice. So why the candle? Why is that your mode of communicating to the universe what you want?
Yes, absolutely. So if we think about elements, for example, right? And let's say with fire, if you light a piece of paper on fire, it ignites very, very quickly. It's a very powerful driving force. A candle, if I can, and I'm just going to give an example because this kind of helps people understand a little bit better.
Yeah.
What I tell people is like a candle itself, it's just a candle. If you take this and light it and you just light it, you're just lighting a very pretty candle with beautiful images on it. But the material that candles are made out of, whether it's beeswax, whether it's soy, even paraffin, palm wax, all of the different types of materials, all have some sort of energy because they are, even though they're processed, they are a natural material. If they come from the earth, then it has an energetic vibration. So when you combine a candle in a specific color, this one is the lucky money drawing candle. Green is the color for money in most places. Not really universal. Some other countries, it's different colors. But for the most part, at least here in the U.S., we associate green with the color of money, abundance, and finances. So when you take this candle, you have the color association. You have specific symbols that still draw on energy, vibrational alignment for what it is that you're trying to manifest. And then when you light this candle and you put a flame to it, now you're putting in energy. You're adding energy that's alive. And when you speak into that energy, when you're dressing your candle, praying over it, maybe saying some words of intention or an affirmation, that energy from your breath and your life force and your chi is, you're essentially speaking it over the candle, but you're speaking that into the flame of the fire. As it burns, that energy is going where? It's going into the ethers, it's going into the universe. And when you think about it, whatever you send to the universe, there's going to be a response. Every action has a reaction. I mean, that's just basic physics. Right. So working with candles, one, produces very quick results because you're using the element of fire versus maybe burying something in the earth can be a little bit slower because things grow slowly. Right. And when you combine all of these different elements together, you have you've constructed a very powerful way of taking your request that's in here and sending it up there, and then having the results come back down to you. So in my experience, candle magic has always worked. It has always produced results very, very quickly. I think it's something that's easy that anybody can do. Most people already practice candle magic and don't realize it. When you blow out a birthday candle, you make a wish.
Yeah.
When you light candles for a loved one who has crossed over, you have a candlelight vigil that's sending energy, sending them into the light, sending them with blessings and love. So that's really candle magic. And it's also very inexpensive. I mean, these candles are abundant. You can find them almost anywhere in this country. There's a spiritual shop where you can get them. So aside from all of the other tools that are available to you for magic, in my personal opinion, candles are easy, they're cheap, and they work. They just work. And I
Yeah.
think nowadays we're blessed that we do have modern technology because back in the day, witches didn't have these fancy candles. They were
No.
making candles out of
Yeah.
their own natural raw materials. So now we have something that, again, is inexpensive and it has all these beautiful little symbols that vibrate on certain frequencies to bring what we want to us. And like I said, it just works, really.
Yeah, and something that I saw, I've seen folks online say, well, you can't light a candle for everything, and a candle won't work for everything, and it's so basic candle magic, and come over here and I'll show you what to do with this cow's tongue or something like more
Hmm.
intense. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
But it sounds like you're saying that maybe that's not really the case. Maybe because of the nature of what a candle is and how it operates, it can be used for perhaps most things. Are there things that you feel like candle magic is not helpful for or cannot
Hmm.
like rise to the challenge of?
Yes. In fact, someone asked me that question yesterday. So I do believe there is a candle for everything.
Hmm.
There is a caveat to that, and there are some things that candles are not appropriate for. For example, if someone's diagnosed with a medical condition, a candle cannot cure a disease. What a candle can do is it can support you energetically. It can help guide you to the right resources to get the type of care that you need. It can bring a sense of peace and calmness mentally and emotionally and spiritually while maybe you're dealing with a certain ailment. But, burning a candle is not going to take away something that really does need medical attention for.
It could bring you
Um,
money to afford the medical care that you
abs-
need, right? It might be,
absolutely,
yeah.
absolutely.
Of all people, I know you have not just worked with candles for a really long time, but you've worked with different types of candles. And I imagine at this point in your life, you have made candles, you've bought candles, you've tried them all.
Mhm.
Give me the real deal on the candle game. Do I have to be hand pouring candles made from premium beeswax that I harvested from the bees myself in order to work really good magic? Or like, can I just go get me some 99-cent jump off from the corner stores, maybe kind of dusty, been sitting there for a while, and work some
Mhm.
real magic with that paraffin candle that, maybe was made in China forever
Right.
ago?
So that's a great question. I'm so sad. I'm so glad you asked that. And I'll be very honest with you. I kind of have mixed feelings about both.
Mm.
So I'm gonna work a little backwards. Can you get a typical candle from, let's say, Dollar Tree, Family Dollar,
Right.
whatever? Absolutely, you can. It's still a
Hmm.
candle. I'm a little biased, however, and I do believe that energy plays a big part. So where you get your supplies from can make a difference. On the flip
Mm.
side to that, I also feel that magic shouldn't be something that breaks the bank. Most people resort to spiritual work or resort to magic because they have a situation that they're trying to fix, and they've probably exhausted all other avenues. So the last thing you want to do is be dishing out all this money, especially if you don't have it, on spiritual supplies. So if all you can afford is to go to the local dollar store and get your candles from there, go ahead and get them. The candle itself, again, is just a tool, but because of where they come from, you have to think about how many people have handled them, have they been sitting on a shelf collecting dust, those sort of things. So that's where it's important to learn how to cleanse your candles, how to charge them with your intention, how to really kind of focus that energy into what it is that you're trying to manifest. So the short answer is yes, you can use a Dollar Tree candle, and it will most likely still produce the same results if you bought a $25 candle. So here's the flip side to that. Do you need to pour your own candles? Well, no, you don't have to. Um, does it make a difference? A little bit, because when you're constructing your own candle, then your energy is going into your candle from start to finish. And I always remind people a spell starts with the first thought. I'm going to do X, Y, and Z for this. So if you think
Hmm.
about you're getting your wax, you're mixing it down, you're putting in your ingredients, you're stirring it, you're talking to it, it's going to be a little bit stronger because it's fully constructed from you from the inside out. Um, why there's this big controversy about beeswax, palm wax, paraffin is because paraffin candles, although they are great, they are processed. They go through a huge manufacturing process and they're not necessarily as pure or as natural as beeswax. And if something is not tampered with as much and it's as close to its natural form as possible, then the belief is that there's more energy coming from that material. Um, Beeswax candles in particular, my thought process is if you think about the way bees work, how they work together in a community, how they build their own hive, how they create their own honey. Honey is it's a very essential ingredient around the world. So if you're doing maybe a really, like, let's say you have a very serious situation going on, and if you can afford to buy the maybe a little more expensive beeswax candle to have that energy of how bees work go into your work, I would suggest it, but it's not necessary. The average newbie witch who may be just trying to manifest a new job or some more money or, fix your relationship. No, you don't have to go out and buy all these expensive materials to see results. A lot of it is intention based, but I do feel, and in my experience, I have seen different results using different materials. Palm wax is one of my favorite candles, and they're pricey. I've tried to make them. That didn't go so well. And they cost a little bit more than what you find the traditional candle at the Botanica. But I feel like candle magic is almost like constructing the right prescription, the right recipe. For me, palm wax money candles are the only thing I will burn. I have burned a money machine candle for the past 8 years. And I could buy 100 paraffin candles, but to me, nothing gives me results as quickly as the palm wax. But that's what aligns with my energy. Another practitioner, another witch might burn a palm wax candle and say, Jasmine, nothing happened. I didn't get the same result. I have a friend that was burning green money candles for months. And I finally said to him, why don't you burn a different color? Like if green isn't working, burn red. He burned a red money candle, instant, 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 instant. So I feel like it's really what connects with you vibrationally, what kind of makes sense. If you do have it in your budget to spend maybe a little bit more and get something that's a little closer to its natural form, or depending on the situation, then do that. But like I said, if you're starting out, if you're new, if you're just trying to manifest some things that aren't, you know, for example, you don't have like this crazy court case you're going through. If it's just really simple life stuff, get your paraffin candle from the Botanica for $5, $6, $7. Put your intention in it. It's going to work.
Do you have a theory for why the palm wax works so well for you for prosperity? Do you think that's the nature of the palm wax? Does palm wax kind of have that energy of fertility, abundance, or is it more personal, like you just have a personal connection with the palm wax?
Yeah, so I think it's a little bit of both. I do feel like it does have a connection to prosperity, fertility, growth. It is a little bit closer to a more natural material. So it's more natural than paraffin.
Mm-hmm.
It's not quite to me as natural as beeswax because it is still processed. But it's like one of those, it's cheaper than beeswax because let's face it, I burn a ton of candles. I'm not going to buy a $25 beeswax candle three, four, five, 6 times a week. I'm just not. So paraffin gives me that in between, not as expensive as beeswax, a bit of a better natural material, a little bit better quality than paraffin, and still affordable for me. Also, the way my magic works is I'm very visual. If I look at something, it has to look pretty, it has to feel good. Paraffin candles are actually beautiful when they pour, and the feathering or the crystal like structure of the candle to me is very aesthetically pleasing.
Mm-hmm.
It just feels magical, and if it feels good, and every time I look at that candle, I'm like, God, you're so beautiful. I know you're gonna bring me all the abundance that I want. I really have a connection to it, and I think that's why they work so well for
Yeah.
me.
And then I guess that leads me then to like, Size, because that's the other question about material. Size does matter, size doesn't matter. You will hear witches say you can work a powerful spell with a birthday candle, and I've tried and it doesn't feel the same. And, though I understand that, you know, perhaps in an emergency maybe that's all I've got and that is what I can work with, but there have been things I've done where, yeah, a birthday candle was perfect. That's what I needed. It was exactly the punch, it was just right. So I know that magic can be worked with any size of candle, in theory, but in your experience, does that kind of show up, that any size of candle is fine? And maybe you can give me a little bit of insight on the whole argument between chime versus glass, and should it be 7-day, and is that not enough, or, you know, et cetera, et
Yeah.
cetera.
So okay. First of all, for me, it depends on the type of spell that you're performing. Timing plays a lot into it. So, for example, if I'm doing a full moon spell and I only have a little short window of full moon energy, I've got 3 days to capitalize on that full moon. Well, I'm probably not going to light a 7-day candle on the full moon for something I want to draw in, because now we're going into the waning moon. So I'm losing energy. So now I have a 7-day candle burning at the not really wrong time, but not the
Not
best
an ideal
supported
time,
time.
right?
Right. So in that case, if I knew I only had, let's say today's the full moon is at 100% and I need quick results, I'm probably going to burn a smaller candle so it can burn that night and produce the results I want very quickly. I call something maintenance magic. So for your 7-day candles, if you have, for example, a prosperity altar, my 7-day candles are on my altar 24/7. That's just my maintenance. I'm not even really asking for anything. I'm just keeping that energy, a constant flow of energy, which is why I love 7-day candles. I also feel like big requests, longer burn. So if you're asking for something very big, you have a big situation that you're trying to send some energy to create a specific outcome, then lighting a birthday candle, that's probably not going to be as effective. If you
Right.
have a court case that you're fighting, a birthday candle is not going to do very much. If you're trying to reconcile with your lover, a birthday candle, it's just not enough energy. The flame doesn't burn strong enough, it doesn't burn hot enough, and it doesn't burn long enough. Some situations require an intense, sort of large amount of energy directed to it in order to change that situation around. So you have to pick your candle based on what is it that I'm working on. I love those freestanding candles, the image candles of the male and female, or all these different images that they have. And again, those are very good for I'm doing one spell on the full moon, on the new moon. I really want quick results.
Right.
I love image candles because there's a lot you can do with them. So I have one here. I think we're all kind of familiar with them. But image candles, you can use them to connect to your own personal energy. You can use them and connect them to a target's energy or whatever the situation is. So shapes do matter. Again, it's all vibration. So if I'm working a particular spell in a situation with an individual that I want them to respond a certain way, I'm going to use a figure shaped candle to link that energy to them. I probably wouldn't use a 7-day candle. If I knew that I'm getting ready to maybe start a new job where I'm going to make commission or I'm going to make tips, then I will probably burn a 7-day candle consistently on a regular basis, so those consistent flow of tips and money and commissions come in. So you really have to first decide, is this a long-term goal or is this a short-term goal? Is it something that, oh, I just need to manifest a quick $200, a little extra $200 to pay this bill? Okay, small candle. I want to get approved for a homeowner's loan and purchase my first house. You may want a big candle, and you may want to burn that candle for several weeks as you're going through this process of trying to attract something really big and abundant to you. So that's how I kind of determine which candles are appropriate and for what.
I think, one thing that is important is candle safety. That is super important. um, and I want to talk about leaving candles burning and the importance of them, and like how to go about that in maybe a safe way or things
Hmm.
of that nature. Because I often get that question from folks: Can I put my candle out? Can I go
Hmm.
to sleep like this? And it's one of those things where it's like, this is a chat between two practitioners, okay? So we're gonna keep it real here, all right? I always tell anyone that client, student, whomever, snuff out your candle, put it
Hmm.
out, don't walk away from it being burnt, all of these things.
Hmm.
I definitely leave my candles going.
Right.
Okay, I'm just gonna keep it real. And I feel
Yes.
like you probably do too. So we're gonna
Hmm.
talk about how to do that safely. Okay,
Hmm.
so for all legal purposes, we say don't ever leave your candle unattended. Make sure to put it out. Don't even leave the room to go pee with it burning. Okay, now that we said that, how do you take care of your candles? Because I'm a big
Right.
lantern person and I am
Okay.
obsessed with lanterns. I've got like two big white lanterns, and they have turned
Hmm.
into be the most valuable investment I have ever made in my life. I have a candle burning on my altar as I speak right now in my house. My
Hmm.
husband's out working. I'm over here at the shop. And the
Hmm.
only reason I feel totally comfortable about that is because I have a lantern
Right.
that it's sitting in. So I know I see yours are more like out and exposed. Like, what do you
Hmm.
do to keep them safe? How do you
Hmm.
manage that?
Yeah. So, okay. So, yes, I agree with you completely. Like you, I tell people snuff your candles out, relight them, put them out when you leave. If you're going into another room, put them out. And yes, my candles are burning 24/7. Now, fire safety and common sense, I don't leave freestanding candles burning and leave my house. I have two cats, so I have to keep that in mind as well. But I will, if I'm doing a ritual for a client, because I've been doing this for so long, I feel perfectly comfortable to walk into the restroom while my client's candles are burning and come back and do whatever I need to do. For those people who tell me, Jasmine, I really don't want to put my candles out, I've heard it's better to let them continue to burn. I will tell them, if it's a glass candle, to place them down inside of a vessel of water. They have those little containers from Dollar Tree. Stick it all the way down in there if you're absolutely not going to put them out. Or if you must, which I'm not a huge fan of moving them once they're lit, but if you must, you can stick them down in your sink, fill it up with some water, go run your errands for a couple of hours, and come home. Um, like I said, I always keep mine going, but I will extinguish them if I absolutely have to. Luckily for me, I work from home. I'm home a lot because I'm doing things like this or I'm talking to clients. So it's very rare that and if I do leave, it's usually something in the neighborhood. It's very rare that I'm gone all day long where I have to be very, very, very concerned about my candles. Um, I do tell people to watch them. I think it's very important, especially with glass candles. You have to watch the wick and make sure it doesn't travel to the side of the glass where they can pop and break. When they get down to the very, very end and they're getting ready to go out, you want to make sure that you pay attention to them. Safety first. If you're not sure or you're a little nervous, put them out.
Yeah.
This kind of goes back, I'm gonna just veer off just a tiny bit
Yeah.
because this also kind of goes back to people who are practicing in the closet a little bit, or they're
Yeah.
not really able to burn 7-day candles and they're like, well, if I can't, my family, my husband, I don't want anybody to see this, then I will tell
Yeah.
them use a stick candle, use, a smaller candle, but you absolutely have to watch it. I always tell people put it in a fire safe container. I mean, I'm sure you have. I've seen people do some very strange things with candles, like light candles on wood tables, and I'm like, "What are you doing? You're going to catch your table on fire." Be
Mm-hmm.
extremely, extremely careful and cautious. So, and that kind of goes back into picking your size candle. If you know you're leaving town the next day, or you know that you're practicing kind of in the closet and your family doesn't know about your spiritual practice, then a 7-day candle is not a good choice for you. You
Right.
have to pick something that makes sense and that you can allow to burn while you're awake. Never fall asleep with a freestanding candle.
Right.
I'd rather a client put the candle out and relight it the next day than to think, I'm gonna just go to sleep and I'm gonna hear it, or you have to be very careful.
Yeah, no, for sure. If you have fallen asleep and you hear the fire, it is probably very, very too late.
Yes.
Yeah, so for sure, that's really important, and I'm glad that you mentioned that about folks who are maybe in the closet or can't have their candles out, because I do want to talk a little bit about like candle alternatives and things like
Hmm.
that with you for folks. But before we get into that, I want to kind of just stay on the candles and just ask a little bit about like um, methodology in terms of taking care of the candles and uh, cleansing. I guess we'll start right at the top. When we first get a candle, is cleansing something that you have found to be important? Is it something that you do with your candles? And if so, how? What might be, if I'm a new witch and I don't necessarily have a whole altar set up and I don't have everything at my disposal, but I just bought this candle, what might I want to do with it first to make sure that it's going to work for me, and how could I cleanse it with maybe just like materials that I have around?
Hmm. Yeah, so it is absolutely important to cleanse your candle when you first get it. One, you're cleansing off any physical dust and dirt that it may have picked up during transportation and all of those things. But we also have to remember, when you prepare your candle, when you dress this candle, it now becomes alive. It is a living vessel. So other people's energy will attach, if we anything we touch, anything that our energy can transfer to. So you don't want to bring a candle home and just light it that has been touched by the person who put it on the shelf and the guy who packed it and the woman who poured it. That's a lot of energy, and it that can block. Now the candle's so overfilled with everybody else, that can kind of put a little barrier and block what you're trying to put into it.
Right.
So I tell people, easiest thing to do if you don't have any materials, this is your first candle ritual, there's nothing more purifying than plain water. Run it under some water. If you have some salt where you can maybe take a little bowl and make a little salt bath and you can sort of just pour the water over the outside of the candle, then do that. Again, that also goes back to what type of candle are you using. So a glass candle like this writing can come off very easily. So I'm not going to use things like Florida water or anything alcohol based. I would probably just use a little salt water solution and then take my paper towel napkin and just sort of wipe around the inside. A freestanding candle, however, mine is getting the wick wet. I can bathe her in some salt water and cleanse whatever energy that she may have picked up in transportation. Um, so water is good, salt is good, or you can use incense. So your sage, your Palo Santo, or if you just have any type of incense smoke, just take your incense, go around your candle with your incense, and as you're doing that, think about the intentions. I'm clearing away anyone else's energy. This candle is now mine. It's going to produce the results that I want. You can speak those things out loud. And that would be where I would start before I light it, dress it, put any oil in it, make sure it's cleansed. Hold your candle, feel that connection to it. If you invest your time and energy and money to buy something, then you have to truly feel and believe this candle is going to work. And that might mean sitting in meditation, sitting for a few minutes, just kind of holding it and vibing it up and all of those things. And that's something you don't need any ingredients for. Water and your own intention. That would be where I would start before
Yeah.
I did a candle ritual.
Yeah, the holding thing is actually a not much talked about like aspect of connecting with the candle. I knew a witch that said when she would do love attraction work, she would sleep with the male figure candle like the night before she did the work. Just have it
Mm-hmm.
in her bed, like near her pillow or what
Mm-hmm.
have you. Just kind of laying down that energetic groundwork of like, you are mine, we are
Mm-hmm.
together, like I'm treating this candle like it's the, especially a figure candle, it's the individual that I am going to be working, whether it's myself or somebody else. So that
Mm-hmm.
makes a lot of sense. And something that I've heard people talk about and became a part of my practice is to remember that, and I guess you can chime in on whether or not you have something similar that you do, but for me, because wax is energetic and because it is so like clinging at it, for those of you who've never touched a candle, it's kind of sticky, because
Mm-hmm.
wax kind of naturally melts as soon as it comes into contact with the warmth of you. So it wants to cling to stuff like so much. And so even after I cleanse it, if I don't use it immediately, it begins to start picking stuff up again, so you cleanse this candle and then you leave it on a shelf in a room where you and your boyfriend are arguing all the time, or it's really dusty, no one ever goes in there, and it starts to get funky and stagnant, and a cleansing right before what you're going to do might be necessary. So I have a candle tip for folks out there. If you are looking to cleanse your candles and keep them clean, I like to cleanse my candles as soon as I come home from the Botanica, or as soon as they come in the mail, or wherever I'm getting them from, because I'm lazy and I don't like to have to stop and cleanse anything before I do work. So I cleanse them as soon as I buy them before I put them away, to make sure that they're all good. But I'm kind of running a risk by putting them away that they could get funky again. So what I started doing was, all of my candles that are small enough, I keep them in a jar. So like, I'll have all my white chimes and my black chimes and my colorful ones. I keep them in jars, and I pour salt and sometimes other essential oils and herbs and stuff into the jar, and I keep them in there. And then when I'm ready to use, I can pull it out and I know I'm good, because they were cleansed when I first came home, but then they sat in salt for the entire time. So I know that if they came into contact with anything undesirable, that they didn't pick that up, and they're good to go. So I'm gonna share that tip.
I like that.
I'm gonna share that tip. Keep your candles in salt when they're not in use, to keep them clean and cleansed, if you're not planning to use it right away. Because when I'm ready to go, I'm ready to go. And I'm like, I gotta stop and cleanse everything. I'm like, no. I need to put everything cleansed in my little cabinet, so when I'm ready to go, I can pull stuff out. So that's my little candle tip.
I love that idea. Now, I've never done that with the salt, but I will try it. I think that's really a great idea. It's easy. I have a lot of crystals around the house, everywhere. So I kind of feel like my crystals kind of pull anything that comes into the house. Yeah. However, even if you're right, if my candles have been sitting, let's say for a couple of weeks since I bought them, I kind of just stockpile, I will do a quick little smudge around them, because I've already done an intense cleansing, and because most likely if they're up in my candle cabinet, I have crystals up there, quartz crystals and selenite specifically. So I kind of rely on my crystals to energetically pull anything and keep the candle from absorbing too much energy in the house. Right. Luckily for me, I don't have a ton of company. It's just me and my fiance, so there really isn't traffic in and out. But for some people that do have big families and friends and are a little bit more social, I love the salt idea. I think that's really great, and it just makes it easy. You grab your candle and now you can go.
Yeah, I was ready to go. It was very, very helpful. Someone, I think it was Olivia, the Witch of Wonderlust, talked about keeping her chime candles in jars. And then that just took me down a road of like, well, what could I do in the jar? Well, now that they're in jars, I could put stuff in the jar. Like, that's great. You could throw some crystals in there, some crystal chips, or anything else that's absorbing of energy or neutralizing of energy would work. So, but it has been very helpful to do that. And I guess the nature of your space as well. So if you keep your candles in a sacred space, and that space is regularly cleansed, and you're you have boundaries about what can happen there, and maybe that's a place where you don't take your cell phone calls, or you don't have arguments, or you don't stuff like that, then you may have less of an issue with your candles just kind of sitting there for a while. But since I just wanted to be extra sure, I came up with that, and it's been working pretty good. So
I love it. I think that's a good idea. And I'm glad you also mentioned, because some people have smaller spaces, and not everybody has the luxury of having maybe a spiritual room, or maybe they just have a small cabinet or kind of storage area. And again, when you're going back to households that are very busy and very social, things happen, disagreements happen, tears get shed, all those sort of things. So yes, keeping them in the salt, I think, would definitely keep them protected. But if that is the case, and if somebody does live in a very active and social household, I would totally recommend re-cleansing your candles before you start using them.
Yeah.
And I think now is a great time for a break.
I wanted to ask you about actually working with the candles, because candle magic is something we see literally everywhere in every tradition. And I call it candle magic, but not every tradition will call it magic. But the working with candles to achieve some type of an energetic or spiritual goal, we see absolutely everywhere. So there's a lot of ways in which you can approach working with candles. If someone wants to get started with working with candles and isn't really attached to a particular tradition or approach or anything like that, where might they start in terms of actually working with candles? Like, because there might be some fear, some nervousness, like I don't have a particular tradition, I haven't been given like a specific set of what prayers do I use, or what should I inscribe on the outside, should I not, etc. If I'm coming to the practice of witchcraft from like a non-denominational type of a place, where might I start with just learning how to actually cast with a candle?
Hmm. Very good question. So when we go back to the thought of intention and energy, it comes from within. So if you have just, I mean, you have like just a candle and maybe a pen and paper, you don't have a lot of the fancy tools and oils and all this sort of stuff. It starts with intention. So one, getting very clear on what is the goal? What is the end outcome? What am I lighting this candle for? Truthfully, and this has just been what I've learned over the years, whether you inscribe directly on the candle or whether you write it on a piece of paper, doesn't make that big of a difference. What I do find is for some people who are new to the practice, a lot of us being able to focus, meditation isn't everybody, something that everyone's really knowledgeable in how to do. We have that chatter in the back of our mind. Our thoughts wander around in 75 different places. So to sit quietly and just focus intensely on a candle for 5, 10, 20 minutes at a time can be challenging for some people, which is where the idea of writing out a petition or maybe inscribing on your candle comes in. So as the candle is burning, that energy of your intention is already there, and it just kind of gives you a little bit of a peace of mind. When you're beginning and you're starting, like, this is my first candle spell, you want to think about it as you're working with an element. Fire is an element, and you're working with your own intention, your heart, your spirit, your mind, your desire. Um, that's before we even get into adding roots and herbs and things like that. So, one thing is, nothing bad is going to happen to you from lighting a candle.
Okay.
I think a lot of people are a little fearful because of things that they've been taught or been told or seen in movies and things like that. If
Yeah, we
I sit
saw what
down,
happened when he lit that black candle. So, a lot of us are traumatized since childhood
it's
about,
true.
like, you can't just walk in somewhere and light a candle. It may not
It's
be a good idea, but
it's very true, but I also feel like now let me backtrack just a tiny bit. You do have to be cautious with spiritual work. When you are doing spell work, you are opening yourself up to a parallel energetic kind of dimension. And yes, there are spirits that reside in all those sort of things, and that can get very complex. But unless you're sitting and you're calling all these names or you're calling out for these spirits or you're really doing something that you don't know how to do, and you're trying to just, is anybody out there and hear me? Don't do that. Unless you're doing that, for the most part, doing a simple candle ritual with a candle, your intention, a written petition is pretty close to being relatively harmless for the newbie. So I don't want people to go into it and they're very fearful that if I light this candle, am I going to attract some demons to me or is it going to
right.
backfire?
Are the
Chances
Sanderson
are,
sisters going to be in my bedroom?
right, they're going to come flying through your window.
Which
Um,
personally I would be into, but that, might be startling to others.
Right, but that's not really necessarily going to really happen. So just if that kind of brings a peace of mind to people to just sort of release that fear. And that's another thing why I love candle magic. You don't have to belong to any tradition or denomination or be initiated to anything. You're working with the elements of the earth, you're working with the energy of the moon or of the sun, whichever, if you do your work in the day, if you do it at night, you're working with energy that is already here, that was put here by, call it what you want to call it, the creator, God, universal source energy, it's already here for you to use. So go ahead and tap into it. And as long as you're clear in your intentions and your magic, oh, I don't know if I should say this, but I'm gonna say it. Your magic is justified, right? Then you don't really have anything to worry about, and chances are you will have successful results and not have to worry about anything backfiring or conjuring up some woo spirits or anything
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah. I'm glad that you say that because I think that candles in particular have this sort of like ooh kind of
Mm-hmm.
air about them, because I think they're considered by like maybe like Christians or people who are opposed to witchcraft or opposed to magic. It's like a gateway. It's like the
Mm-hmm.
gateway drug. You know what I mean? And my mom very much like kind of took it that way when I was in high school and she found my candles. It was like, no, this is the start of demon worship and we have to get rid of these candles. Meanwhile, we would get all dressed up, travel to church on Sunday morning, and sit in front of an altar with a pastor standing on it, covered in candles, like
Mm-hmm.
rows and rows and rows of candles. But like my candle is a problem. But I think it's because people understand there's an inherent spirituality about working with a candle.
Mm-hmm.
It's it's almost never innocuous in the sense that even
Mm-hmm.
if you are lighting a candle just for light, let's say,
Mm-hmm.
that's powerful. If you are
Right.
without light and you need a
Mm-hmm.
candle for lighting, that is huge. And
Mm-hmm.
so I think candles just they feel important to people even when people don't really know how to work with them. So I think because of that importance, like they feel like they open up the world of energy to you or something. Like
Mm-hmm.
there's something really important about the lighting of a candle. So I think people get nervous that like, ooh, this is a bigger deal than just like flick, lit.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like I'm doing something when I light this candle, and you are. But I think that it's nothing to be afraid of what you are doing. You're really just kind of activating specifically the element of fire and
Mm-hmm.
saying, hey, I want to harness this energy and direct it out for some greater good, or for some, I'm going to say greater good since you said justified.
Absolutely. And yeah, you are correct. So candles, they are a portal. They can open up portals, but again, I think it's not like you're going to light some candle and now all of a sudden you've opened up the floodgates and all these,
Yeah.
you're going to have all this paranormal activity happening. That doesn't always necessarily happen. Now, if you're lighting candles and you really don't know what you're doing and you're just, watching movies or going through a spell book, or you're calling all these different entities that you really don't know anything about, can you call them to you? Yeah, you can. That's why you have to be very careful, but that goes back to having a very clear, specific intention. That's why a lot of witches will talk about doing some sort of protection, maybe casting a circle, wearing a crystal or some sort of amulet to protect yourself. I know that can get a little deep for those that are new, but just kind of keeping it very simple. A simple candle ritual for a little extra money here, or a job interview or something like that, isn't going to really bring any harm.
Right, because what you're doing is, the candle is a container. In a lot of
Hmm.
ways, I think candle spells are kind of container spells. But instead of putting into a jar or something like that, you're containing the intention into the wax of the candle, and it's intended to dissipate. So it's like a temporary kind of container spell. But so you have the container, which is holding the energy that you've put into it and the intention that you've put into it, and then you're using the element and the energy of fire to release that out into the universe in a expeditious way and send that out. And knowing that that is what you are doing with the candle, I think will help folks to not be so scared, because then it's like, okay,
Hmm.
I am making a statement and I'm sending it out into the world. If I make a statement and I send it out into the world, and that statement is essentially one of goodness, whatever that
Hmm.
means for you, it's a good,
Right.
it's a positive to me or to somebody else or what have you, then that's what you're doing. You're sending out positivity into the world. And if there is any backlash from that, then in theory it would be positive, and that's fine. So if you have any concerns about what you're opening yourself up to when it comes to candle magic as a newbie, maybe the first thing to keep in mind is like, what am I trying to do with this candle? Because maybe if I'm trying to do something that brings harm to somebody, and I feel like a candle might be opening up something I can't handle, maybe I don't want to do something harmful. Do you know what I'm saying? Like if a candle could bring back energy to me, then I'm going to want to put out statements of goodness and light, and like I want good things to happen, abundance for me, or good health for this person, or what have you. If I'm worried that lighting a candle might open up a can of worms that I can't control, then I can maybe minimize some of the potential for that by not sending out something that might be attractive to the nasties that are over there.
I agree completely. I want to share just a little story of my experience of a candle working backfiring.
Yes, we love stories.
And I always laugh to myself. And at the time when it happened, I was like, seriously? So before I went professional with my spirituality, I used to work in the healthcare industry. And I had a coworker that just was very difficult. We'll just put it like that. And I decided to hotfoot her because I was like, the workplace, and it wasn't just me. A lot of people felt this way, but I'm like, the workplace might be a little bit better without this very difficult individual here.
Yeah.
So I did the ritual. I did a candle, hotfoot, all of that, and it worked. It worked so well. I was like, okay, great. So the coworker ended up going on a medical leave. So one, it was like, okay, she's kind of gone temporarily. At least we have some peace around here. So she ended up going on a medical leave for 4 months. I had to take over all of her responsibilities.
Oh no!
At the job. So I was like, are you kidding me right now? Like, this is bittersweet. So we sort of kind of got rid of the, bad seed in the bunch. And now all of her tasks were assigned to me for those 4 months that I had to take over them. So it was kind of like, yeah, it worked, but maybe I wasn't very clear in my petition, because if I had thought for 1 second that they were going to be like, oh, she's out, and by the way, here's her files, you're in charge of these.
I would not have done that.
No,
I would have found another way. Yeah, no, thank you for sharing that, because that's a great example of like, what you are shifting energy. Basically, you are shifting energy, and I always think that like energy does not happen, it doesn't exist in a vacuum. So it's not like you take energy from here and now you just have this empty bubble. Where you take it from now, energy has to flow. It's like, I don't know, like a bucket of water or something, you pull the plug, the water doesn't just sit there. It's now going to flow out. So when we make changes energetically, there are then like readjustments that have to be made. And sometimes those readjustments are not so desirable. And so if you are a little bit worried about what impact your candle spell could have on the world, then perhaps something a little more gentle than a hot foot, a little more kinder than a hot foot might keep you from, having some issues on the term. Because there's always a splashback. Like there's always a splashback. I always think of it as, we talk about karma. And Hindu mystics are quick to tell us that we have no idea what karma is because we use it totally wrong. The idea of like, I did something bad, now something bad's going to happen to me is not quite exactly it. My understanding of how karma works is it's really more of like throwing a stone into a puddle in front of you. The bigger the stone, the bigger the splash. And the bigger the chances that some of that splash is going to get on you. But if you send out a gentle little pebble, something small, etc., or you're wise enough to throw very far away from you and you know how to do that and set up distance between you and what you're doing, then the splashback might not be as much, or you might not get totally soaked. You might just get a couple of drops and it might not be as bad. So I think when we're lighting a candle, we tend to think about the energy we're sending out and don't really think about the splashback all the time. Like there's going to be kind of a shift in the energy that happens, and some of that might come back on you. But that's true of any kind of magic, I guess.
I agree completely. Yeah, and like you said, when you're sending out things that are maybe relatively positive. If there is any type of return, then it would essentially be good
Right.
in a sense.
Right,
Yeah.
right, right. So I wanted to ask you a little bit about candle alternatives, because we did touch a little bit on folks who maybe are in the closet as practitioners. They might be new, they might be young, working at home. That was my struggle as a teenager, living at home with my very Christian, a fan of my candles mom. It was a lot of like lighting candles at night or trying to find other alternatives. So what are your thoughts on candle alternatives? Are they effective, and what are some that someone might reach out for if lighting a candle is not an option for them?
hmm they definitely are effective. I mean, anything that you do in terms of setting an intention and using tools specifically aligned with what that intention is, it's going to produce some sort of result. I always tell people if they can't burn candles, well, you can still do jar spells without a candle. Little mini jars, mason jars, where you put all of your ingredients, put your intention in there. You may have to spend a little bit more extra time charging it up because now you don't have that element of fire or that heat to kind of get things going quickly. So what does that look like? That looks like maybe you spend a few more minutes speaking your intention over it. Maybe you give it a little TLC every day at 5 o'clock. I'm gonna sit down with my jar and I'm really gonna meditate on what it is that I want it to bring to me. You can wear oils. You can do spiritual baths that are not just for cleansing, but for attracting things. You can just simply write out your petition journal, write it in a book, scripting.
Yeah.
That's something a lot of people do. That's something my grandmother always did. If you get just yourself get a new notebook from the dollar store and just, I am so happy and grateful for receiving and writing the things that you want. That's something you can keep in a backpack, keep under your mattress. Nobody has to see it. It's your book of manifestations. You never have to light a candle. And it does definitely work.
Ooh, you
There's
could get a
magical,
journal with a candle on it. And that
that's
could
true
be
too.
like anytime you would want to do a candle spell, but you can't, you could
hmm
script what it is you want to see happen in your
hmm
candle journal. So
Absolutely. No, I love that. I mean, you can even anoint that journal page with a little attraction oil or whatnot. You can wear magical jewelry for things that you want to attract. You can listen to affirmations before you go to bed that are aligned with things that you're trying to bring into your life. You can create a vision board. Nowadays, people are more modern and you can have a vision board on your cell phone. It could be your screensaver, it could be on your computer, your laptop, in your planner. So there's a lot of other things that are available to you. I love potted plants. If people can't do money spells with burning candles, I tell people go get a potted plant. Put some money down into that soil. As the plant grows, you'll start to see your abundance grow. So there's a lot of ways that I call you can still kind of witch in the closet and be open, under everybody's nose and nobody necessarily knows what you're doing. Candles are not the end all be all. So I don't want anyone to think that if I don't have a candle, I can't do a spell or it's not going to be as effective because essentially that's just not true. Candles do produce different results and very quickly, but again, it's all intention based. If you made a crystal grid, a wishing box, a little altar box, there's so many other ways to practice your magic and see results that you do not have to light a candle if they're not available to you.
yeah, for sure, for sure. And for those of you out there, because I know we have a lot of new witches and we have a lot of witches who are in the closet. But for those of you who are OG witches and don't want to work with candles or are tired of working with them because you don't want to buy them all the time or you don't want
hmm
to have to maintain them or stay on top of them, one thing that I've really been getting into lately is oil lamps.
hmm
And oil lamps actually have a lot of history being used magically in hoodoo and conjure practice.
hmm
But you can work those very similarly to a candle where you can add herbs and different things to the oil, even petition papers into the oil, and let that burn and not necessarily have to buy new candles every time and all of that stuff. You just fill it up with olive oil or whatever oil and you can
hmm
keep it going, and burn it. So that's kind of a candle alternative for people who can have flame but are looking for an alternative from the traditional candle
Hmm.
route of going with things.
Yeah,
Um,
I'm glad you
yeah.
brought that up. I just want to mention because I recently started working with oil lamps. And
Same, same.
I will tell you, and I love candles, like that's my thing. But the oil lamp, that puts a very different spin on your magic. And when I say I
Doesn't
have
it?
seen results come so quickly, I'll
Yeah.
just look at that lamp like, did you do that? You did that, didn't you?
Yeah.
And it is a lot safer, and I like it for long-term things. You can put a lot of goals. I created what's called, I call it my Crown of Success oil lamp, where I listed my goals for 2022 and I just refill it, and they just happen very quickly. Very, very, very quickly. So it is a great alternative to candles, and it's cheaper, honestly.
Yeah, in the long run. So I too am just starting to learn more about oil lamps, and I plan on carrying some in the shop because I'm like, I want to get them for me. I might as well share them with everybody else. But they are a great alternative for folks who are able to have flame, and flame is not the issue. Maybe you just don't feel particularly called to candles, or like I
Mhm.
said, the expense, or the time it might take to keep them on hand or things like that. The oil lamp is great, especially for I use these have you ever heard of lucid candles?
Mm-mm.
So I'm gonna reach out to them because maybe they should sponsor me, because I feel like if I put all the witches onto lucid candles, they're gonna blow up, and I deserve credit for that. Because when witches get a hold of this, it's gonna be like whoa. And I would grab one, but I'm not sure I have one around. But basically, a lucid candle is a plastic candle. It looks like a white candle. It has a cotton wick, and the top is removable. And you pour oil inside and put the top back on. So it functions like an oil lamp, but looks like a white candle. And they have different colors and designs and
Hmm.
different things like that. And I was like, wait a minute, I think this is, there's no way in the world they made this for the witches, but this is like perfect because you get that beautiful balance of having the aesthetic of the candle and
Hmm.
that look. So maybe you're using it on an altar and you want that look particularly, but it's refillable with oil and has just one big cotton wick that takes forever. I've never run out of my wick actually, and I've had these for years. So um, lucid candles, it's like a beautiful cross between an oil lamp and a candle. You get the candle vibe, but the kind
Hmm.
of continuance of an oil lamp. So
I
I'm
like
gonna,
that. You know
yeah.
what? As you're speaking, what my thought was going back to maybe the person that can burn candles, but not necessarily 7-day glass candles or magic candles.
Right.
So you can have a beautiful candle burning, and but nobody knows that what's inside is actually part of your spiritual practice. So that's
Yeah.
really neat.
Yeah. It's like I like the deceptive. I'm all about the deception. Witchcraft in plain sight can be very effective. So your candle can look like just a piece of, just like a self care candle or like a decorative candle, and you can add essential oils, and it can just, oh, it's just a scented candle, but underneath it is a petition or something like that. So
Yeah.
there are ways to still use that fire magic, still use that idea of using some type of container to send off your intention into the universe, outside of the traditional candles, if for some reason the traditional candle is not the best option for you, I would
Yeah.
say.
I love it.
Um, I'm wondering, and I know folks are always wondering about resources. Just real quick before I let you go, if I'm, aside from your YouTube channel, obviously, if I'm getting started with candle magic, are there some resources that were helpful for you that you would point folks towards? Maybe some books or some guides that can get people started in their candle magic journey?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we all know YouTube is a great resource, but it can be a little overwhelming because there's just a plethora, a melting
So
pot of all this
much.
information.
Yeah.
I do tell people you definitely want to read as much as you can, study various traditions. Joining Facebook groups is a very good resource also. Joining different types of Facebook groups, because someone starting out may not really know the type of magic they want to practice, but it's nice to be able to connect with like-minded individuals
Right.
and really see what other people are doing and figuring out what resonates with you. So I mean, social media nowadays is the best way to sort of connect. So I would say Facebook groups would probably be outside of YouTube the next best thing, or going into your local bookstore and just picking some books off of a shelf and just diving into the information and reading them as much as possible. Um, I get a lot of people asking me where can I meet individuals that are maybe spiritual and like-minded that I can connect with. And there is a particular app that I love called meetup.com. You may be familiar with it or not. But when I used to go on Meetup, there was a LA Pagan and Witches group, and they would meet once a month, and it would just be all these different people coming together and hanging out and talking, and everyone was from a different background but sharing stories of their practice. And I met a really lot of amazing individuals, even from different spiritual backgrounds. But I learned a lot about witches that practice different types of magic. So for someone who's a little more social and wants to connect with people that way, but I would say start with your Facebook groups.
Yeah, yeah. I have been very like anti Facebook for a while, like
Hmm.
just in general, and then the metaverse. I was just like, no. But now I'm kind of coming back around because now my online coven has a Facebook group, and it's turned out to be like the perfect place for people to chat. Because unlike platforms like YouTube or Instagram, where you have someone giving you information and then maybe you can comment but you can't really like talk to other people. Facebook groups allow you, everyone can post, they can share videos and stuff like that. And
Hmm.
what's been happening in our Facebook group is people are showing like, this is an altar I'm working on, what do you guys
Hmm.
think about this, or have you ever tried working with this before? And it's really turning out to be a really great platform for exactly that. So I would definitely second that. Facebook groups are very helpful for
Hmm.
that. And you might have also like local apps and things like that. There's a new one called Nextdoor. But
Hmm.
I don't know if you're familiar with it. I've only
Hmm.
known of it like in New York, but it's literally just for like connecting you very locally with people in your neighborhood. So there are definitely sources out there for people who are
Hmm.
looking for other practitioners or to learn more about candle magic out there. And there
Hmm.
are some great. Do you have any books?
I have not any that I've written. I'm working on that, but I do have a huge library of books. And you know what book that I like in particular? One of my favorites that's just like to the bare bone basics. It is The Idiot's Guide to Witchcraft and Wicca.
Yeah,
And
people always talk about that book. It
I
is
love
such
it.
a useful book. It really is.
It's a good resource, and I feel like regardless of what area of magic you go into, a candle's still a candle, a bell is still a bell, an athame, incense. So it gives you just the very elementary kind of this is what this is for, and you can apply that into your own practice. You don't have to be Wiccan or anything like that. It just has a very great source of information.
Yeah.
There's another book that I love called Moon Spells, and I believe it's by Diane Lindquist. I think that's
Mm.
how you pronounce her last name, which basically tells you how to utilize the energy of the moon cycles to do very simple rituals.
Very
Um,
cool.
I'm trying to think off the top of my head, but those would be for someone who's new and starting out and didn't really know, like, I just want to know the very basics, I would probably start there.
Yeah.
Um, if I think of some other things, we can figure out a way to get that information to people. But those would
Yeah.
be my two recommended for someone who's just buying their first candle. I'm doing my first ritual. What do I do? That will give you pretty much everything that you need.
Yeah, I love that. Those are definitely helpful, and I'll throw one in there. Madam Pamita, just she's going to be on the show this season, and she recently released a book. I think it's called the Big Book of Candle Magic. I think, but
Hmm.
it's just like a fat guide to candle magic, kind of regardless of what your tradition is. It explores different ways to work with candles, different styles, different things like that. And of course, we will all be waiting with bated breath for your book because it's about time for sure. I know you shared so much knowledge over the years in your videos, but sometimes learning from a book is a little bit more helpful. You can take notes and all of that stuff. So I can't wait to see your book and share that with folks. So I want to let you go. You've been with us for such a long time. I really appreciate this conversation, and I just want to make sure people know how to find you. So can you let us know what you're working on right now, or where people should be paying attention to you right now?
Absolutely. So I am across all social media platforms, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, all under one ritual away. I do have two Facebook join. One is called Let's Talk Magic. The other one is Real Talk with Witches. Inside of those groups also, we have group files where people have uploaded a plethora of information. There's PDFs, there's worksheets, there's a lot of information. So if you're looking for a resource where you can come and maybe pull up a PDF or pull up a book or something like that, all of that is inside of the Facebook group. They are private groups, very safe spaces. One group has over 20,000 people. The other group, it's a lot more smaller and intimate. So you can definitely gain some insight and connect with other people. Right now, I am in the process of working on Mystics Candle Magic and Conjure Academy. That will be up and running for the fall season, going right into Halloween and in the witchy season. So that's I'm in the process of working on it. It should be live by September. I also offer one-on-one coaching sessions. So if someone comes to me and says, "Hey, I want to learn how to do a spell for this. Can you help walk me through the ingredients I need and how to cast it?" That's also a service. All of that information is available on my website at oneritualaway.com.
I love that. Thank you so much. I will definitely be paying attention to when that class drops. That is super cool. I want to thank you so much for all of your time, all the information you shared with me today, with all of us today. I'm like, this is for me. So I'm like, yes, this is so fantastic. And I just want to remind all of the viewers and all of the listeners that it's important to gain knowledge, because when we know better, we witch better. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. It was my pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you, witches, for tuning in to another episode of the BetterWitch podcast presented by the Modern Witch Network. New episodes air every week. You can watch the video broadcast on YouTube every Tuesday at 7 p.m. Eastern, or listen to the audio version on your favorite podcast platform every Thursday. And if you're a BronxWitch Coven member, join us right after each YouTube broadcast for a live Q&A about the episode. Whether you're watching on YouTube or tuning in on your favorite podcast platform, we want to know your thoughts on today's episode. So please make sure to leave reviews and drop comments wherever you are. You can show support for this podcast by grabbing some sweet merch over on my YouTube channel, and join the BronxWitch Coven also on YouTube for behind the scenes footage from today's episode and the details to join in on those live Q&As. See you next week, and blessed be.